Picture this: a snowbound luxury train, the Midnight Express, hurtling through the night toward Istanbul. A scream pierces the silence, and a man lies dead in a locked compartment, a serpent-carved dagger in his heart. Enter Hercule Poirot, the master detective, whose little grey cells unravel a web of secrets among the passengers. A Russian countess, a brash American, a nervous governess, a secretive doctor, a charming art dealer, and a veiled widow. Clues pile up: a hidden notebook, a blue silk thread, a coded telegram, a pressed flower. But who is the killer? In a race against time, Poirot exposes a deadly smuggling ring and unmasks the Viper in a shocking confrontation. Will justice prevail before the train moves on Chapter 1? The journey begins. The platform at Calais was a tableau of hurried farewells and swirling snow, the flakes catching the golden glow of the station lamps. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned to the chin and his Homburg hat tilted just so, stood poised beside the gleaming blue carriages of the Midnight Express. The train, a symbol of opulent travel, was ready to embark on its fabled journey to Istanbul. Slicing through the wintry heart of Europe, Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, surveyed the scene with a quiet intensity. His moustache, a masterpiece of wax and precision, twitched slightly as he adjusted his scarf against the chill. He was not here for leisure, though the allure of the Orient Express was undeniable. No, this journey was at the behest of Monsieur Henri Dubois, a director of the Compagnie Internationale des Wagons-Lits, whose cryptic telegram had summoned Poirot with promises of a matter requiring his unique talents, his little grey cells, as he fondly called them. The porter, a young man with a nervous deference, ushered Poirot to his first-class compartment, number 7, where the polished wood and crisp linen spoke of luxury. Poirot inspected the space with a fastidious eye, ensuring his small valise was stowed precisely, his travelling rug folded just so. Satisfied, he tipped the porter and made his way to the dining car, his steps measured, his mind alert. The dining car was a study in elegance. Crystal glasses sparkled under chandeliers, and the murmur of conversation mingled with the clink of silverware. Poirot, ever the observer of human nature, took a seat near the window, ordering a tisane to warm his hands and sharpen his senses. The passengers were a mosaic of wealth and mystery, each a potential player in the drama Poirot sensed was brewing. At a table to his left sat Countess Elena Volkov, a Russian émigré whose diamonds glittered at her throat like frozen tears. Her face, pale and angular, held a hauteur that did not quite mask a flicker of unease. Across from her, Mr. Leonard Baxter, an American industrialist, laughed too loudly, his broad hands gesturing as if to claim the room. His suit, though expensive, bore a faint stain at the cuff, a detail Poirot noted. Miss Clara Henshaw, a prim English governess, sat alone, her nose buried in a dog-eared copy of Jane Eyre, her fingers clutching the book as if it were a shield. Dr. Emil Sauer, a German physician with a gaunt face and piercing eyes, sipped his wine with deliberate slowness, his gaze lingering on each passer-by. Signore Giovanni Rossi, an Italian art dealer, moved with a practiced grace, his smile charming but calculated, as if every word were a brushstroke on a canvas. And in a shadowed corner, Madame Beatrice Fournier, a French widow swathed in black crepe, stared into her untouched coffee, her eyes red-rimmed yet resolute, as if wrestling with some private sorrow. The train's whistle shrilled, a mournful cry against the snow-laden night, and the Midnight Express lurched forward, its rhythm steady as it carved through the darkness. Poirot sipped his tisane, the herbal warmth soothing, and allowed his mind to wander over the passengers. Who among them, he wondered, carried secrets heavy enough to disrupt the harmony of this journey? His reverie was broken by a piercing scream, sharp and raw, cutting through the clatter of the dining car. Glasses paused mid-air, conversations halted, and even the train's gentle sway seemed to falter. The conductor, Pierre Michel, a man with a neat moustache and a harried expression, appeared from the corridor, his face pale as he hurried toward the second-class carriages. Poirot, his curiosity ignited, set down his cup and followed, his small, precise steps belying the urgency within. The snow continued to fall outside, cloaking the world in silence, but within the midnight express, a storm was gathering. Poirot's heart quickened, not with fear, but with the thrill of a puzzle unfolding. The game, as he often said, was afoot. Chapter 2. The Body in Compartment 12. The scream still echoed in Hercule Poirot's ears as he followed the conductor, Pierre Michel, through the narrow corridor of the midnight express. The train's gentle sway had ceased, its wheels locked in a snowdrift somewhere near Belgrade, and the air inside the carriage was thick with the chill of the winter night. The passengers, roused by the cry, peered from their compartments, their faces a mixture of curiosity and dread. Poirot, his green eyes gleaming with purpose, maintained a composed exterior, though his mind raced with possibilities. A scream on a train, he knew, was rarely without consequence. Pierre Michel, his conductor's cap slightly askew, reached compartment 12 in the second-class carriage and fumbled with his master key. The door, heavy and polished, resisted for a moment before swinging open to reveal a scene that stopped even Poirot's practiced heart. A man lay sprawled across the berth, his body twisted in an unnatural repose. A dagger, its blade buried deep in his chest, gleamed under the compartment's dim light. Blood had seeped into the crisp white sheets, forming a dark, irregular stain that spread like an accusation. The air held a metallic tang, sharp and unmistakable, mingling with the faint scent of an unfamiliar perfume. Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting every detail: the locked window, its latch undisturbed, the bolted door, which Michel had just opened, and a small table where a wallet lay untouched, its leather gleaming as if mocking the violence before it. Michel, his face ashen, stammered, "Mon Dieu, Monsieur Poirot, it is Monsieur Grayson, Victor Grayson, a British gentleman. He boarded in Paris." His voice trembled, betraying a nervousness that Poirot filed away for later scrutiny. Poirot stepped closer, his movements deliberate, his gloved hands clasped behind his back to avoid disturbing the scene. The victim was a man of middle age, perhaps 50, with a lean face and thinning hair. His eyes, wide open in death, stared blankly at the ceiling, and his mouth was frozen in a grimace of surprise or pain. The dagger, Poirot noted, was no ordinary weapon. Its handle was intricately carved with a serpent coiled around a crescent moon, a design that suggested origins far from the European capitals the train traversed. The blade, though bloodied, was of fine craftsmanship, its edge honed to lethal precision. "Michel," Poirot said, his voice calm but commanding, "fetch the train's physician, if there is one, and ensure no one enters this compartment. We must preserve the scene exactly as it is." Michel nodded, his hands shaking as he backed away. Poirot knelt beside the berth, his eyes scanning for details the untrained might overlook. The victim's coat, flung carelessly over a chair, bore a faint smudge of ash on its sleeve. A glass of water, half drunk, stood on the table beside the wallet, its surface undisturbed by ripples. Poirot's gaze lingered on the floor, where a single thread, blue, silken, lay near the door. He retrieved it with a pair of tweezers from his pocket case, holding it to the light. It was not from Grayson's clothing, which was all sombre wool and cotton. A clue, perhaps, from the intruder. The window, though locked, drew Poirot's attention. He examined its frame, noting the absence of scratches or forced entry. The bolt on the door, too, was intact, suggesting the compartment had been sealed from within. Yet the murderer had escaped, leaving no trace save the body and the dagger. Poirot's mind whirred. A locked room, a single fatal wound, and a missing piece to the puzzle. He turned to the table, where the wallet's presence puzzled him. Robbery, it seemed, was not the motive, but something was missing. Michel had mentioned a notebook listed in Grayson's manifest, a small, leather-bound volume Grayson had carried. It was nowhere to be seen. Dr. Emile Sauer, the German physician Poirot had observed in the dining car, arrived, his gaunt face set in a frown. He carried a medical bag, its leather worn but meticulously maintained. "Herr Poirot," he said with a slight bow, "Michel tells me there has been a tragedy." "Indeed, doctor," Poirot replied, gesturing to the body. "Can you confirm the cause and time of death?" Sauer knelt beside Grayson, his movements precise despite the cramped space. He examined the wound, his fingers probing gently around the dagger. "A single stab to the heart," he said after a moment. "Death would have been instantaneous, or nearly so. The blood has begun to congeal. Perhaps an hour ago, no more. Around 11:45 p.m., I would estimate." Poirot nodded, noting the time. The scream had rung out at 11:47, according to his pocket watch. The killer had acted swiftly, with no hesitation. Sauer's eyes lingered on the dagger, a flicker of recognition passing over his face before he masked it. Poirot, ever observant, made a mental note. "You have seen such a weapon before, doctor?" he asked, his tone deceptively mild. Sauer shook his head too quickly. "No, Herr Poirot. It is unusual, but I am no expert in such things." His German accent was clipped, his gaze avoiding Poirot's. Michel returned, his nervousness more pronounced. "Monsieur Poirot, the passengers are restless. They demand to know what has happened." "They will know in time," Poirot said firmly. "For now, ensure they remain in their compartments or the dining car. No one is to leave the train." He turned to Sauer. "Doctor, I thank you for your assistance. Please remain available." As Sauer departed, Poirot continued his examination. He lifted Grayson's hand, noting the absence of defensive wounds. The man had not struggled, suggesting he was taken by surprise or incapacitated. The faint perfume lingered, elusive yet distinct, with notes of jasmine and something earthier. Poirot's thoughts drifted to the dining car, where he had observed the passengers. Could the scent belong to Countess Volkoff, whose elegance was matched by a guarded demeanour? Or perhaps Madame Fournier, whose widow's weeds concealed more than grief? He searched the compartment further, lifting the mattress and inspecting the walls. In the corner, beneath the berth, he found a crumpled cigarette stub, its paper marked with a faint gold crest. Grayson, according to Michel, did not smoke. Poirot pocketed the stub, his mind turning to Leonard Baxter, whose loud laughter and restless hands had marked him as a smoker in the dining car. The ash on Grayson's sleeve, too, suggested a connection, perhaps a meeting or an altercation. Poirot stepped back, his eyes tracing the compartment's confines. The locked door and window posed a conundrum. He recalled the train's layout, its corridors and service panels. Could the killer have accessed a hidden route? He resolved to question Michel about the train's design, suspecting the conductor's nervousness hid more than fear of scandal. The snow outside had thickened, blanketing the train in an eerie silence. The midnight express, stranded in the Yugoslavian wilderness, was a world unto itself, its passengers bound by the crime. Poirot's gaze returned to the dagger, its serpent motif glinting malevolently. It was no random weapon, he was certain. Its origin suggested a connection to the train's destination, Istanbul, a city of ancient secrets and modern intrigues. Grayson, he suspected, was no mere financier. His death, so precisely executed, pointed to a motive rooted in betrayal, greed, or something darker. Michel hovered at the door, wringing his hands. Monsieur Poirot, what shall we do? The passengers— Calm yourself, Michel, Poirot interrupted, his voice steady. We shall proceed with order and method. First, I must know more of Monsieur Grayson, his habits, his conversations, his enemies. You saw him board in Paris. Did he speak with anyone? Did he seem agitated? Michel hesitated, his eyes darting to the corridor. He was reserved, monsieur. He kept to himself, but he asked for privacy, even paid extra to ensure it. He mentioned no enemies, but he seemed watchful, always looking over his shoulder. Poirot's moustache twitched. And did you see anyone near this compartment before the scream? Michel shook his head, then paused. There was a woman. I heard voices in the corridor earlier, around 10:30 p.m. A woman's voice, low, with an accent. I could not place it. Perhaps foreign. I thought nothing of it at the time. A woman, Poirot mused, his mind conjuring the faces of Countess Volkoff, Miss Henshaw, and Madame Fournier. And you did not see her? No, monsieur. I was attending to a passenger in first class. Poirot dismissed Michel with a nod, his thoughts racing. A woman, a dagger, a missing notebook, and a locked compartment. The pieces were scattered, but Poirot thrived on such puzzles. He stepped into the corridor where a small crowd had gathered, their whispers hushed by his presence. Countess Volkoff stood at the edge, her diamonds catching the light, her expression unreadable. Baxter loomed nearby, his cigar smoke curling upward. Miss Henshaw clutched her novel, her knuckles white, while Dr. Sauer watched from a distance, his eyes narrow. Rossi, the art dealer, leaned against the wall, his charm undimmed, but his gaze wary. Madame Fournier was absent, perhaps still in the dining car. Monsieur Poirot, Baxter called, his American drawl cutting through the murmurs. What's happened? Is it true someone's been killed? Poirot raised a hand, silencing the crowd. Mesdames et messieurs, there has been an incident. For now, I ask that you return to your compartments or the dining car. The authorities will be informed when we reach a station. Until then, I, Hercule Poirot, will ensure justice is served. The passengers dispersed reluctantly, their glances heavy with suspicion. Poirot returned to compartment 12, closing the door behind him. He stood over Grayson's body, his mind assembling the clues, the serpent dagger, the blue thread, the cigarette stub, the missing notebook, the locked room, the woman's voice. Each was a thread in a tapestry he would unravel, but time was short. The killer was among them, trapped on this snowbound train, and Poirot knew they would not remain idle. He opened the wallet, finding a few pound notes, a business card identifying Grayson as a London financier, and a photograph of a young woman with dark hair and a shy smile. The back bore no inscription, but the edges were worn, suggesting it was cherished. Another clue, perhaps, to Grayson's life and his death. The train's whistle sounded, a futile cry against the snow. Poirot straightened, his resolve firm. The Midnight Express had become a stage, its passengers players in a deadly drama. He would watch, listen and deduce, for no secret could hide from Hercule Poirot. As he left the compartment, locking it behind him, he felt the weight of the challenge, a puzzle worthy of his little grey cells. Chapter 3. The Passengers' Tales. The dining car of the Midnight Express, its chandeliers casting a soft glow over the mahogany tables, had transformed into a stage for Hercule Poirot's inquiry. The snow outside continued to fall, sealing the train in a cocoon of isolation somewhere in the Yugoslavian wilderness. The air inside was heavy with tension, the passengers' faces etched with unease as they awaited Poirot's next move. He stood at the head of the car, his small stature commanding the room, his green eyes scanning each face with the precision of a jeweller examining a gem. The murder of Victor Grayson in compartment 12 had cast a shadow over the journey, and Poirot knew that among these travellers, each a study in poise, secrecy or bravado, lurked a killer. He had instructed Pierre Michel to summon the first-class passengers, those whose proximity to the crime and whose demeanour in the dining car had piqued his interest. The second-class passengers, less likely to have accessed Grayson's compartment unnoticed, would be questioned later. Michel, still pale from the discovery of the body, stood by the door, his hands clasped to steady their tremble. Poirot had requested a table be cleared for his interviews, and a notepad lay before him, its blank pages waiting to capture the truths and lies of those he questioned. His method, as always, was order and logic, and he would begin by unravelling the alibis of the night. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, a crime has been committed aboard this train. Monsieur Victor Grayson is dead, murdered in his compartment. I, Hercule Poirot, have taken it upon myself to discover the truth. Each of you will speak with me, and I ask for your candour. The smallest detail may be the key to justice. The passengers exchanged glances, some wary, others defiant. Poirot gestured to Countess Eleanor Volkov, who sat nearest, her posture regal despite the circumstances. Madame la Comtesse, if you please. The Countess rose, her silk gown rustling as she approached. Her diamonds sparkled, but her eyes were cold, like the snow outside. She took the seat opposite Poirot, her hands folded delicately in her lap. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her Russian accent soft but deliberate. I am at your disposal. Where were you, madame, at the time of the scream? 11:47 p.m.? Poirot asked, his pencil poised. I was in my compartment number 3 reading, she replied. Pushkin, in the original Russian. I find it soothes the mind on long journeys. And you heard nothing unusual before the scream? Nothing. The train's rhythm, the wind, perhaps a distant conversation in the corridor. But I was absorbed in my book. Poirot noted the precision of her answer, too polished perhaps. You did not leave your compartment. No one can confirm your presence. Her lips tightened. I travel alone, monsieur. My maid remained in Paris. I had no need to wander the train at such an hour. Poirot inclined his head, dismissing her for now. Her alibi was unverifiable, her demeanour too controlled. He made a note. Countess Volkov, reading, alone. Check compartment for signs of activity. Next came Leonard Baxter, the American industrialist, who strode to the table with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His suit was impeccably tailored, but Poirot's sharp eyes caught the faint burn mark on his cuff, a detail from the dining car, now more significant in light of the ash on Grayson's sleeve. Baxter sat heavily, his broad frame filling the chair. Mr. Baxter, Poirot began, where were you at 11:47? In the lounge car, smoking a cigar, Baxter said, his voice booming. Couldn't sleep, so I went to stretch my legs. The waiter there, young fellow with a scar on his cheek, saw me. Poirot nodded. The lounge car was 2 carriages from Grayson's, a plausible alibi if confirmed. And did you know Monsieur Grayson? Baxter shook his head. Never met the man, heard he was some British money type, but that's all. I keep to my own business. Poirot's gaze lingered on the burn mark. You smoke, monsieur. Cigarettes, perhaps, as well as cigars? Cigars mostly, Baxter said, his eyes narrowing. Why? Poirot smiled faintly, revealing nothing. A detail, nothing more. Merci, Monsieur Baxter. He noted. Baxter, lounge car, waiter corroboration needed. Cigarette stub. Miss Clara Henshaw approached next, her steps hesitant, her novel clutched to her chest like a talisman. Her plain wool dress and tightly pinned hair spoke of modesty, but her eyes darted nervously, and Poirot detected a faint scent of jasmine perfume, the same he had noted in Grayson's compartment. She sat, her hands twisting in her lap. Miss Henshaw, Poirot said gently, where were you when the scream was heard? Asleep, Monsieur Poirot, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. In my compartment, number 5. I retired early after dinner. The journey fatigues me. You heard nothing? No voices? No footsteps? She shook her head, but her fingers tightened on the book, and Poirot saw a tremor in her hands. I am a heavy sleeper, she said, avoiding his gaze. And Monsieur Grayson, you knew him? Her cheeks flushed, a sudden bloom of colour. No, I never spoke to him. I keep to myself. Poirot's moustache twitched. Her reaction betrayed a connection, however slight. He made a note. Henshaw, asleep, nervous. Perfume match? Investigate past with Grayson. Dr. Emile Sauer was next, his gaunt face impassive as he took the seat. His medical bag rested at his feet, and his long fingers steepled as he met Poirot's gaze. Herr Poirot, I wish to assist in any way I can. Your whereabouts at 11:47, Doctor? Poirot asked. I was in the corridor, pacing, Sauer said. I suffer from insomnia on trains. The motion, it unsettles me. I saw no one near compartment 12, though I passed by earlier. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Sauer's presence in the corridor placed him close to the crime. And you knew Monsieur Grayson? Only as a fellow passenger. We exchanged words in the dining car yesterday. About the weather, nothing more. Poirot noted the doctor's steady voice, but recalled his fleeting recognition of the dagger. Thank you, Doctor. Remain available, if you please. His note read, Sauer, corridor, insomnia, dagger reaction. Signore Giovanni Rossi approached with a disarming smile, his dark eyes bright with charm. His tailored suit and silk tie spoke of wealth, but his hands moved restlessly, betraying a nervous energy. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his Italian accent smooth, this is a terrible business. Indeed, signore, Poirot replied. Your whereabouts at the time of the scream? In my compartment, number 4, writing letters to clients in Rome, Rossi said. My business, antiquities, requires constant correspondence. And Monsieur Grayson, did you know him? Rossi's smile faltered. No. I saw him in the dining car, but we did not speak. My work keeps me occupied. Poirot noted the hesitation. Rossi's trade in antiquities could link to the serpent dagger. Grazie, signore. His note. Rossi. Letters. Alone. Antiquities connection. Finally, Madame Beatrice Fournier was summoned. She entered slowly, her black morning dress absorbing the light, her face pale beneath a lace veil. She sat with a quiet dignity, her hands folded over a small prayer book. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice low, I am shaken by this tragedy. Where were you, Madame, at 11:47? Poirot asked. In my compartment, number 6, praying, she said. My husband passed a year ago, and I find solace in prayer at night. You heard nothing unusual, only the scream. It woke me from my devotions. Poirot studied her, noting the redness in her eyes, genuine or artful. And Monsieur Grayson? I did not know him, she said firmly. I keep to myself. Poirot thanked her, his note reading, Fournier, praying, alone, grief authentic. As the passengers returned to their seats, Poirot reviewed his notes. Each alibi was plausible, yet fragile, unsupported by witnesses. The scream's timing, 11:47, was precise, yet no one admitted to being near compartment 12. The jasmine perfume on Henshaw intrigued him, as did Baxter's burn mark and Sauer's corridor wandering. Rossi's trade and Volkoff's accent warranted further scrutiny, and Fournier's solitude felt too convenient. He turned to Michel, who lingered nervously. Monsieur Michel, the lounge car waiter, fetch him. I must confirm Monsieur Baxter's alibi. Michel nodded and hurried off. Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where the snow fell relentlessly. The train was a microcosm, its passengers bound by fate and suspicion. He recalled the blue thread, the cigarette stub, and the missing notebook. The perfume, too, was a thread to follow. Henshaw's scent, or another's. The killer had been clever, but Poirot's little grey cells were relentless. He would listen, observe, and piece together the truth, for no one could outwit Hercule Poirot on the Midnight Express. Chapter 4. The Clue of the Serpent Dagger. The Midnight Express remained entombed in snow, its opulent carriages now a prison for its passengers and a labyrinth for Hercule Poirot's meticulous mind. The dining car, where he had conducted his initial interviews, was now dimmed, the chandeliers casting long shadows as the hour grew late. Poirot sat alone at his table, his notepad filled with precise annotations, his green eyes glinting with the quiet intensity of a man who thrived on puzzles. The murder of Victor Grayson in compartment 12 was no ordinary crime, and the serpent-carved dagger plunged into his heart was no ordinary weapon. Its exotic design haunted Poirot, whispering of motives and origins far beyond the snowbound train. He had dismissed the passengers to their compartments, save for Pierre Michel, who hovered nearby, his conductor's uniform slightly crumpled, his eyes betraying a restless anxiety. Poirot had confirmed Leonard Baxter's alibi with the lounge car waiter, a scarred young man named Jacques, who vouched for Baxter's presence smoking a cigar at 11:47 p.m. Yet the cigarette stub with its gold crest, found in Grayson's compartment, gnawed at Poirot's thoughts. Baxter claimed to smoke only cigars, but the ash on Grayson's sleeve suggested a connection. Poirot resolved to revisit this discrepancy, but first he needed to unravel the dagger's significance. He returned to compartment 12, the scene of the crime, with Michel trailing reluctantly behind. The body of Victor Grayson remained on the berth, covered now with a sheet at Poirot's insistence to preserve dignity and evidence. The air was colder here, the metallic scent of blood sharper in the confined space. Poirot knelt beside the berth, his gloved hands careful not to disturb the scene. The dagger, still embedded in Grayson's chest, drew his gaze like a magnet. Its handle, carved with a serpent coiling around a crescent moon, was not merely decorative, it was a signature. The craftsmanship suggested an artisan's hand, possibly from Turkey or the Levant, regions steeped in history and intrigue, where the Midnight Express was bound. "Michel," Poirot said, his voice low but firm, "this dagger, it is not a common object. Have you seen its like before, perhaps in your travels on this train?" Michel shook his head, his fingers fidgeting with his cap. "Non, Monsieur Poirot. It is unusual. I have seen many passengers, many objects, but nothing like this." Poirot's moustache twitched. Michel's nervousness was a constant, but his denial lacked conviction. Poirot filed it away, turning his attention to the dagger's details. The blade, though bloodied, was of fine steel, its edge honed to a razor's sharpness. The serpent motif was precise, almost ceremonial, suggesting a cultural or organizational significance. Poirot's mind flashed to Signore Giovanni Rossi, the Italian art dealer, whose trade in antiquities might connect to such an artifact. Rossi's polished charm during the interview had not entirely masked a flicker of unease when Poirot mentioned the murder weapon's description. Leaving the dagger undisturbed for now, Poirot searched the compartment again, his movements methodical. He lifted Grayson's coat from the chair, examining the ash smudge on the sleeve. It was fine, grey, and faintly scented of tobacco, not the robust aroma of Baxter's cigars, but something lighter, like the cigarette stub he had found. He pocketed a sample of the ash, intending to compare it later. Under the berth, where he had found the blue silk thread, he now noticed a faint scratch on the floorboard, barely visible in the dim light. He traced it with a fingertip, discovering it formed a small, irregular circle, as if something heavy had been dragged briefly. A clue, perhaps, to the killer's movements. Poirot stood, his eyes scanning the locked window and bolted door. The locked room puzzle intrigued him most. The window's latch was secure, its frame unmarred by tools or force. The door's bolt, when tested, slid smoothly, confirming it had been locked from within when Michel opened it. Yet the killer had escaped, leaving no trace. Poirot's thoughts turned to the train's design, its hidden panels, service corridors, or perhaps a vent known only to the staff. He would press Michel further, but first he needed more from the passengers. He summoned Signore Rossi to the dining car, where a single lamp illuminated the table. Rossi entered with his usual grace, his dark eyes wary, but his smile intact. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, seating himself, "you work late. How may I assist?" "Signore Rossi," Poirot began, his tone deceptively mild. "You are a dealer in antiquities, oui? You have knowledge of artifacts from many lands. Tell me, have you ever encountered a dagger with a handle carved as a serpent around a crescent moon?" Rossi's smile faltered, his fingers brushing the edge of the table. "A serpent? No, monsieur, I cannot say I have. My trade is in statues, vases, coins, objects of beauty, not weapons." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Yet such a dagger, it is no mere weapon. It is a work of art, perhaps from Turkey or Syria. You travel to Istanbul often, do you not? Surely you have seen similar designs in your dealings." Rossi's eyes flickered, but he recovered quickly. "Istanbul is a city of treasures, but I deal in documented pieces. A dagger like that. It sounds like something from a private collection, not my market." He paused, then added, "Perhaps Monsieur Grayson collected such items." Poirot noted the deflection. "Perhaps. Merci, signore." He dismissed Rossi, writing, "Rossi denies dagger knowledge. Evasive. Check antiquities records." Returning to compartment 12, Poirot examined Grayson's luggage, which Michel had retrieved from the overhead rack. The suitcase was modest, containing suits, a shaving kit, and a few personal items. Tucked inside a folded shirt, Poirot found a fragment of a letter, its edges torn as if ripped in haste. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, with a slight flourish to the letters. It read, "VG, the deal in Istanbul must proceed. Beware betrayal, trust no one." The signature was missing, the paper torn where a name might have been. Poirot's mind raced. VG was clearly Victor Grayson. But who had written this warning? Countess Volkoff, with her guarded demeanour? Madame Fournier, hiding behind her widow's veil? Or even Miss Henshaw, whose nervous blush suggested a hidden connection? He searched further, lifting the suitcase's lining to reveal a hidden pocket. Inside was a train ticket stub from Vienna, dated 2 days prior, its edges creased as if handled repeatedly. Why had Grayson concealed it? Had he made an unscheduled stop, or was this evidence of another journey, another secret? Poirot pocketed the stub, adding it to his growing collection of clues. The blue thread, the cigarette stub, the ash, the letter fragment, and now the ticket. He turned to Michel, who lingered at the door, his face a mask of unease. "Monsieur Michel, this train, it has secrets, does it not? Passages, panels, ways to move unseen." Michel's eyes widened. "The train is secure, Monsieur Poirot. The compartments are private, the corridors monitored. There are service areas, yes, but only staff have access. And you, Michel, you know these areas well?" Poirot's tone was gentle but probing. Michel nodded reluctantly. "It is my job, monsieur, but I swear, I saw nothing, heard nothing until the scream." Poirot studied him, noting the sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. "Very well. Tomorrow you will show me these service areas. For now, ensure this compartment remains locked." As Michel departed, Poirot stood alone in the silent carriage, the snow outside muffling the world. The serpent dagger was the key, he was certain, a symbol of something larger, perhaps a syndicate or a vendetta. Grayson's death was no random act. The missing notebook, the locked room, the feminine letter, and the concealed ticket all pointed to a web of intrigue stretching from Paris to Istanbul. The passengers, with their fragile alibis and hidden truths, were threads in that web. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with activity, piecing together the puzzle. He would return to the dining car at dawn, ready to probe deeper, for the killer was close, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until the truth was laid bare. Chapter 5. The Conductor's Secret. The Midnight Express, entombed in its snowy prison near Belgrade, stood silent under a starless sky, its opulent carriages now a stage for suspicion and secrets. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat draped over his shoulders, sat in the dimly lit dining car, the faint glow of a single lamp illuminating his notepad. The hour was late, past midnight, and the passengers had retired to their compartments, their alibis and evasions lingering in Poirot's mind like the aftertaste of his tisane. The murder of Victor Grayson in compartment 12, with its serpent-carved dagger and locked door, was a puzzle of exquisite complexity, and Poirot's little grey cells were alight with the challenge. Yet one figure troubled him most: Pierre Michel, the conductor, whose nervous demeanour and halting answers suggested he held a key to the mystery. Poirot had observed Michel closely since the scream at 11:47 p.m. The conductor's hands trembled when he spoke of Grayson. His eyes darted to the shadows, and his insistence on ignorance seemed rehearsed. Poirot knew that in a crime such as this, where every detail was deliberate, the staff could not be overlooked. Michel, with his access to the train's hidden corners, was either a witness or an accomplice. Poirot resolved to confront him, to peel back the layers of his fear and uncover the truth. He found Michel in the service area at the end of the first-class carriage, polishing a brass fixture with unnecessary vigour. The conductor started at Poirot's approach, his cloth slipping from his fingers. "Monsieur Poirot," he stammered, "it is late. You should rest. Rest is for those without a murder to solve," Poirot replied, his voice calm but edged with steel. He gestured to a narrow bench. "Sit, Monsieur Michel. We must talk." Michel obeyed, his shoulders hunched, his cap clutched in his hands. The service area, cramped and lined with cleaning supplies, felt claustrophobic, a fitting stage for a confession. Poirot stood, his small frame commanding, his green eyes fixed on Michel's face. "You have been nervous, Michel," Poirot began. "Since the moment we entered compartment 12. You know more than you have told me. I ask you now, as a man of honour, to speak the truth. What did you see or hear before Monsieur Grayson's death?" Michel's face paled, his fingers tightening on his cap. "I told you, monsieur, I heard nothing until the scream. I was in the first-class carriage, attending to passengers." Poirot leaned closer, his moustache quivering with intent. "And yet, you mentioned a woman's voice in the corridor at 10:30 p.m., low and accented. You did not think this significant? A man is murdered, and you withhold such a detail." Michel's eyes flickered with panic. "It was a passing moment, monsieur. I thought it was nothing. A passenger speaking to another. I did not see her." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "You are a conductor, Michel, trained to observe. A voice, an accent, a time. These are not nothing. Tell me more. What was the accent? Russian? French? English?" Michel swallowed, his throat working. "It was foreign, perhaps Russian, but soft, like someone who has lived abroad. I could not be sure." Poirot's mind flashed to Countess Elena Volkov, her polished Russian accent a match for Michel's description. Yet Madame Fournier's low, measured tones could also fit, and even Miss Henshaw's quiet voice, tinged with a provincial lilt, was not beyond suspicion. "And Monsieur Grayson?" Poirot pressed. "Did he speak to you of his concerns, his enemies?" Michel hesitated, his eyes darting to the door as if expecting rescue. Poirot's patience, though vast, had limits. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Michel, you are afraid. Of what? Or of whom? Speak now, or I shall conclude you are complicit in this crime." The conductor's resolve crumbled, his shoulders sagging. "Monsieur Poirot, I swear I did not kill him, but Grayson, he was not an ordinary passenger. In Paris, before we departed, I overheard him arguing in his compartment. A woman was with him. Her voice was low, accented, as I said. They spoke of money, of a delivery in Istanbul. Grayson sounded angry, said something about no more delays. I did not hear the rest. I moved on to avoid trouble. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And you did not report this? Why? Michel's voice dropped to a whisper. He bribed me, monsieur. After the argument, he called me into his compartment. He gave me 50 francs to ensure no one disturbed him during the journey. He said he had dangerous enemies. That privacy was his protection. I took the money. I'm not proud of it. My family, they need... Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Your motives, Michel, are not my concern. Your silence is. This woman, did you see her leave his compartment? Michel shook his head. No, monsieur. I was called to the dining car. But later, Grayson seemed watchful, always checking the corridor. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The argument in Paris, the bribe, the mention of enemies. These painted Grayson as a man entangled in something perilous, perhaps a financial scheme or something darker, tied to the serpent dagger and the missing notebook. The woman's voice was a thread to follow, but Michel's fear suggested he knew more. One final question, Poirot said. The train's design, its service panels, its hidden routes. Could someone move between compartments unseen? Michel's eyes widened, but he nodded slowly. There are service panels, monsieur, for maintenance. Small, narrow, used by staff to access plumbing or wiring. But they are locked, and only I have the keys. Show me, Poirot commanded. Michel led him to a panel in the corridor outside compartment 12, hidden behind a decorative moulding. He unlocked it with a key from his ring, revealing a narrow crawl space lined with pipes. It was tight, but a determined person, slender, agile, could navigate it. Poirot peered inside, noting scuff marks on the metal, fresh and irregular. This leads to other compartments? He asked. Yes, monsieur, to the adjacent ones and the service area. But it is not used during travel. Too dangerous. Poirot's moustache twitched. The panel was a revelation, a possible route for the killer's escape from the locked compartment. He dismissed Michel with instructions to secure the panel and speak to no one. Alone, Poirot returned to the dining car, his notepad open. He wrote, Michel, overheard argument, woman's voice, Russian, bribed by Grayson, service panel access, scuff marks. The conductor's confession had shifted the puzzle's pieces. Grayson's argument in Paris, the bribe for privacy, and the mention of enemies suggested a man on the edge of a dangerous enterprise. The service panel offered a solution to the locked room mystery, but it raised new questions. Who knew of these passages? The killer certainly, but was Michel merely a witness, or had he been coerced into silence? The woman's voice pointed to Volkov, Fournier, or Henshaw, but Poirot needed more to narrow the field. He recalled the clues from compartment 12, the blue silk thread, the cigarette stub with its gold crest, the ash on Grayson's sleeve, the torn letter fragment warning of betrayal, the hidden Vienna ticket stub. Each was a fragment of the truth, and now Michel's revelation added another. A woman, an argument, a deal in Istanbul. Poirot's thoughts turned to the passengers' alibis, all unverified save Baxter's, and even that was not beyond doubt. The jasmine perfume, detected on Henshaw and in Grayson's compartment, was another thread, as was Rossi's possible link to the dagger's origins. Poirot closed his notepad, his mind alight with possibilities. The snow outside continued to fall, sealing the train in its icy embrace. The killer was among them, watching, perhaps planning their next move. Poirot would need to tread carefully, probing each passenger's secrets while guarding his own deductions. He resolved to search the first-class compartments at dawn, with Michel's reluctant assistance to uncover further clues. The Midnight Express was a microcosm of motives and masks, and Hercule Poirot, with his relentless logic, would strip them away to reveal the truth. Chapter 6. The Search and the Discovery. The first pale light of dawn filtered through the snow-laden windows of the midnight express, casting a ghostly glow over the stranded train. Hercule Poirot, ever fastidious, had risen early, his mind as sharp as the frost outside, despite the late hour of his confrontation with Pierre Michel. The conductor's revelation about the woman's voice, the bribe, and the hidden service panel had tightened the web of suspicion around the passengers, but Poirot knew that clues, not confessions, would unmask the killer of Victor Grayson. The dining car, now empty save for the faint clatter of a porter preparing coffee, was his base, but the real work awaited in the first-class compartments, where secrets might lie hidden in the belongings of the suspects. Poirot summoned Michel, who appeared with dark circles under his eyes, his conductor's uniform less pristine than before. "Monsieur Michel," Poirot said, his voice crisp, "we shall inspect the compartments of the first-class passengers. You will assist me, ensuring no one interferes. We begin with Countess Volkov's, number 3. Michel nodded, his reluctance palpable but overridden by Poirot's authority. "As you wish, Monsieur Poirot. But the passengers, they may object." "They may," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching. "But a murder has been committed, and I, Hercule Poirot, will not be deterred by objections. Lead on." The corridor of the first-class carriage was silent, the passengers still abed or breakfasting in their compartments. Poirot's steps were soft but purposeful as he followed Michel to compartment 3. The door, polished mahogany, bore a brass plate with the Countess's name. Michel knocked, and after a moment, Countess Elena Volkov appeared, her silk dressing gown tied tightly, her diamonds absent but her hauteur intact. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her Russian accent sharp with irritation, "this is most irregular. Why do you disturb me at such an hour?" "A murder, madame, is most irregular," Poirot replied smoothly. "I must examine your compartment. It will not take long." Her eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside, her posture rigid. The compartment was a study in elegance. A velvet-upholstered berth, a small table with a crystal decanter, and a leather jewellery case. Poirot's gaze swept the space, noting the book of Pushkin she had claimed to be reading, its pages unmarked by wear. He opened the jewellery case, his gloved fingers deft, and found a hidden compartment beneath a velvet lining. Inside was a small glass vial, half filled with a colourless liquid. He held it to the light, noting its lack of label. "Madame," he said, turning to her. "What is this?" Volkov's face paled, but her voice remained steady. "A sedative, Monsieur Poirot. I suffer from sleeplessness. My physician prescribed it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. The vial's contents could incapacitate a man, rendering him helpless before a dagger's strike. "You did not mention this last night," he said. "It is a private matter," she replied, her chin lifting. "I had no reason to think it relevant." Poirot pocketed the vial, noting her tension. "Merci, madame. We shall speak again," he wrote in his notepad. Volkov, sedative vial, hidden. Sleeplessness or subterfuge. Next, they moved to Leonard Baxter's compartment, number 2. The American was already awake, his cigar smoke curling in the air as he greeted them with a scowl. "What's this, Poirot? Snooping through my things?" "Investigating a murder, Monsieur Baxter," Poirot said, undeterred. "Your cooperation is appreciated." Baxter shrugged, stepping aside. His compartment was cluttered, a contrast to Volkov's order. Papers strewn on the table, a half-empty whiskey bottle, and a suitcase overflowing with shirts. Poirot examined the papers, finding a coded telegram among them. Its text brief. "Grayson delayed. Delivery urgent. Proceed with caution." The sender's name was obscured, the code unfamiliar, but deliberate. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot said, holding up the telegram. "Explain this, if you please." Baxter's face reddened. Business, Poirot. I deal in steel contracts. Grayson's name comes up in trade circles. Nothing more. I didn't know him personally. Poirot's moustache twitched. The telegram linked Baxter to Grayson, contradicting his earlier denial. He searched further, finding a box of cigars but no cigarettes matching the gold-crested stub from compartment 12. Still, the ash on Baxter's cuff and Grayson's sleeve was a connection he could not ignore. He noted, Baxter, telegram, coded, mentions Grayson. Ashlink. Miss Clara Henshaw's compartment number 5 was next. She opened the door in a plain dressing gown, her eyes wide with alarm. Monsieur Poirot, is this necessary? It is, mademoiselle, Poirot said gently. A moment only. Her compartment was austere, its sole adornment a small photograph frame on the table, empty save for a torn corner of an image. Poirot lifted it, noting the fragment depicted a man's shoulder in a suit, eerily similar to Grayson's attire. Henshaw's cheeks flushed as he held it up. This photograph, mademoiselle, he said. Who is it? I don't know, she stammered. It was my father's, kept for sentiment. The rest was lost. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was sharp. Her blush and the jasmine perfume lingering in the air matched his earlier findings. He searched her small suitcase, finding nothing but books and a scarf, blue silk, like the thread in Grayson's compartment. He held it up, watching her reaction. This scarf, mademoiselle. It is yours? Yes, she said, her voice trembling. I wear it often. Poirot nodded, pocketing a loose thread from its hem. Merci. His note read, Henshaw, torn photo, possible Grayson. Blue silk thread match, perfume confirmed. Dr. Emile Sauer's compartment, number 1, was orderly, almost clinical. The physician stood by as Poirot examined his medical bag, finding only standard instruments and medicines. But tucked in a notebook were detailed sketches of the train's layout, corridors, compartments, even service panels. Poirot raised an eyebrow. Doctor, these sketches, why do you make them? Sauer's face remained impassive. A habit, Herr Poirot. I study my surroundings to calm my mind. The train's design interests me. Poirot noted the precision of the drawings, far beyond a casual sketch. You have a keen eye, Doctor. His note. Sauer. Train sketches, detailed. Knowledge of panels. Signore Giovanni Rossi's compartment, number 4, was a treasure trove of papers and catalogues. Poirot found an antiquities catalogue, its pages marked with items from Turkey and Syria, including a drawing of a dagger with a serpent motif, strikingly similar to the murder weapon. Rossi, watching closely, smiled thinly. Signore, Poirot said, holding up the catalogue. This dagger, it is familiar, non? Rossi's smile held. A coincidence, Monsieur Poirot. My trade includes many such designs. I do not own this one. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The catalogue was too precise to be dismissed. He noted, Rossi, dagger in catalogue. Denies ownership. Expertise suspect. Finally, they reached Madame Beatrice Fournier's compartment, number 6. She opened the door, her black morning dress unchanged, her prayer book clutched in her hands. Monsieur Poirot, she said softly, this intrusion pains me. Forgive me, madame, Poirot said, but justice requires it. Her compartment was sparse, almost monastic, with a single suitcase and a rosary on the table. Poirot opened the prayer book, finding a pressed flower, white, delicate, with a faint sweet scent, identical to one he had noticed near Grayson's body, caught in the folds of his coat. He held it up, watching her eyes. This flower, madame, what is its significance? A memento, she said, her voice steady, but her fingers tightening on the rosary. From my husband's grave. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. The flower was too precise a match. He noted, Fournier, pressed flower, matches crime scene. Grief or guise? As they left Fournier's compartment, Poirot dismissed Michel, his mind whirring. The search had yielded a wealth of clues. Volkov's sedative, Baxter's telegram, Henshaw's photo and thread, Sauer's sketches, Rossi's catalogue, Fournier's flower. Each passenger was entwined in the mystery, their secrets piling like the snow outside. The missing notebook, Grayson's Vienna ticket, the woman's voice, and the service panel formed a complex tapestry. But Poirot felt the truth drawing closer. He returned to the dining car, his notepad heavy with annotations, ready to plan his next move. The killer was among them, their confidence shaken by his relentless pursuit. Hercule Poirot would not falter until the Midnight Express revealed its darkest secret. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The dining car of the Midnight Express, its chandeliers dimmed to a somber glow, was a stage set for revelation. The snow outside had ceased, but the train remained locked in its icy prison. The Yugoslavian wilderness, a silent witness to the drama unfolding within. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the car, his small frame radiating authority, his green eyes sharp as they surveyed the assembled passengers. The murder of Victor Grayson, stabbed in a locked compartment with a serpent-carved dagger, had woven a web of suspicion, and Poirot, with his relentless logic, was ready to unravel it. The clues: blue silk thread, cigarette stub, ash, torn letter, Vienna ticket, sedative vial, coded telegram, torn photograph, train sketches, antiquities catalogue, pressed flower, had converged into a pattern only his little grey cells could discern. Now, with the passengers gathered, he would lay bare the truth. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant. A crime has been committed aboard this train, a crime most foul. Monsieur Victor Grayson lies dead, and one among you is his killer. I, Hercule Poirot, have examined the evidence with order and method, and I shall now reveal the solution to this puzzle. The passengers sat in uneasy silence, their faces a gallery of tension. Countess Elena Volkov, her diamonds glinting coldly. Leonard Baxter, his hands restless. Clara Henshaw clutching her novel. Dr. Emile Sauer, his gaze steady but guarded. Signore Giovanni Rossi, his charm strained. Madame Beatrice Fournier, her black veil a mask. Pierre Michel stood by the door, his nervousness palpable. Poirot paced slowly, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. Let us begin with Monsieur Grayson. He was no mere financier, as his papers claimed. He was a British agent, tasked with investigating an antiquities smuggling ring operating between Paris and Istanbul. The serpent dagger, with its crescent moon, is the mark of this ring's leader, known only as the Viper. Grayson's mission was to identify this figure and secure a notebook listing the ring's operatives. This notebook, missing from his compartment, was the key to his death. He paused, noting Volkov's tightened lips and Rossi's subtle flinch. The crime scene was a locked room, the door bolted, the window secure. Yet the killer escaped, leaving only a blue silk thread, a cigarette stub, ash, a faint perfume, and a pressed flower. How? Through a service panel, accessible only to those with knowledge of the train's design. Poirot turned to Michel. Monsieur Michel, you revealed Grayson's bribe for privacy and an argument with a woman in Paris. Her voice accented, possibly Russian. You also confirmed the existence of service panels, one of which bore fresh scuff marks near compartment 12. This panel allowed the killer's escape, but who knew of it? Michel shrank under Poirot's gaze, but Poirot moved on, addressing Dr. Sauer. Doctor, your sketches of the train's layout were remarkably detailed. You claim they calmed your mind, but they suggest a knowledge of hidden routes. Did you share this with another? Sauer's face remained impassive. I did not, Herr Poirot. My sketches are private. Poirot nodded, turning to Rossi. Signore Rossi, your antiquities catalogue featured a dagger identical to the murder weapon. You denied ownership, but your trade places you at the heart of Grayson's investigation. Were you The Viper's agent. Rossi's smile was thin. I deal in art, Monsieur Poirot, not murder. Poirot's gaze shifted to Baxter. Monsieur Baxter, your telegram mentioned Grayson and a delivery. You claimed it was business, but it links you to his mission. The ash on your cuff matches that on Grayson's sleeve, yet you deny smoking cigarettes. A lie, perhaps. Baxter's face reddened. I told you, I stick to cigars. That telegram's just trade talk. Poirot turned to Henshaw, whose hands trembled. Mademoiselle Henshaw, your blue silk scarf matches the thread in Grayson's compartment. Your jasmine perfume was there too, and a torn photograph suggests a past with him. Did you seek revenge? Henshaw's eyes filled with tears. I knew Victor years ago, but I didn't kill him. I swear it. Poirot's gaze softened, then hardened as he faced Volkoff. Madame la Comtesse, your sedative vial could have subdued Grayson before the dagger struck. Your accent matches the voice Michel overheard. Did you write the letter, warning of betrayal? Volkoff's eyes flashed. I wrote no letter. My sedative is for my health, nothing more. Finally, Poirot turned to Fournier, her veil concealing her expression. Madame Fournier, your pressed flower matches one found near Grayson's body. You claim to be praying, but was it a prayer for forgiveness? Fournier's voice was steady. The flower is a keepsake. I had no part in this. Poirot stepped back, his voice rising. Each of you has a connection to Grayson, but one clue eluded me until this morning. The notebook, so vital to the killer, was not destroyed. It was hidden, in Michel's locker, planted to deflect suspicion. Michel gasped, but Poirot continued. I found it this dawn. Its pages listing names of the smuggling ring. The killer believed it burned, but Michel, under pressure, hid it. Why? Because he was blackmailed by the true killer, Madame Beatrice Fournier. The room stilled. Fournier's hands froze on her rosary. Poirot pressed on. Madame, you are the Viper. Your widow's grief is a facade. The flower links you to Grayson, whom you met in Paris. You argued over the smuggling deal, which he threatened to expose. You sedated him with a drug from Volkoff's vial, stolen earlier, and stabbed him with the dagger, a symbol of your authority. You escaped through the service panel, known to you from a previous journey. The notebook, you thought, was destroyed, but Michel's fear preserved it. Fournier's veil trembled, but she remained silent. Poirot's voice was relentless. The letter fragment, the Vienna ticket, the perfume, all were misdirections, but the flower betrayed you. Your composure, madame, is admirable, but the truth is clear. The passengers stared, some with shock, others with relief. Poirot's gaze never wavered. Justice will be served when we reach the authorities. Until then, Madame Fournier, you are confined. The dining car erupted in murmurs, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. The midnight express, though still snowbound, felt lighter, as if the truth had lifted a shadow. Poirot's little grey cells had triumphed, but one chapter remained. Chapter 8. The Resolution. The midnight express stood motionless, its blue carriages gleaming dully under a sky heavy with the promise of more snow. Inside the dining car, the air was thick with the aftermath of Hercule Poirot's revelation. The passengers' faces a tableau of shock, relief, and lingering unease. Madame Beatrice Fournier sat rigid, her black veil no longer a shield but a shroud of guilt, her hands still clutching the rosary as if it could absolve her. The other passengers, Countess Elena Volkoff, Leonard Baxter, Clara Henshaw, Dr. Emile Sauer, and Signore Giovanni Rossi, watched her with varying degrees of disbelief and wariness, their own secrets exposed but overshadowed by her unmasking as the Viper, the mastermind of the antiquities smuggling ring and the murderer of Victor Grayson. Poirot, his small frame commanding the room, stood at the head of the car, his green eyes calm but unyielding. The notebook, retrieved from Pierre Michel's locker, lay on the table before him, its leather cover worn but its pages intact. A silent testament to Grayson's mission and Fournier's betrayal. The serpent dagger, the blue silk thread, the cigarette stub, the ash, the torn letter, the Vienna ticket, the sedative vial, the coded telegram, the torn photograph, the train sketches, the antiquities catalogue, and the pressed flower, all had converged to point to Fournier. Yet Poirot knew the final act required her confession, for justice, as he often said, was not merely in the deduction, but in the truth laid bare. "Madame Fournier," Poirot said, his voice steady as a metronome, "you have heard my accusations. You are the Viper, the orchestrator of a smuggling ring that Victor Grayson sought to dismantle. You killed him to protect your empire, using the serpent dagger as a mark of your authority. You slipped through the service panel, believing you had destroyed the notebook, but you erred, and the truth has found you. Will you speak, or shall silence be your final defense?" Fournier's hands trembled, the rosary beads clicking softly. She lifted her veil, revealing a face pale but resolute, her eyes burning with a mix of defiance and resignation. The passengers leaned forward, their breaths held as she spoke, her voice low and measured, carrying the weight of confession. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, "your mind is formidable. I underestimated you, as I underestimated Grayson. Yes, I am the Viper. For years, I built a network to move antiquities, priceless relics from forgotten empires, to collectors who paid fortunes. My husband's death was no accident. He was a rival, eliminated to secure my control. Grayson, the fool, thought he could infiltrate my operation, posing as a financier. He came too close, demanding a share in Istanbul to keep silent." She paused, her gaze distant, as if reliving the moment. "In Paris, we argued. He threatened to expose me to the authorities. I could not allow it. I planned his death meticulously. The sedative, stolen from Countess Volkov's compartment during dinner, to render him helpless. The dagger, a gift from a Syrian contact to mark my triumph. The service panel, learned from a disloyal porter years ago to escape the locked room. I thought I had burned the notebook in a moment of panic, but Michel, that weakling, kept it, fearing my wrath. Michel, standing by the door, flinched but said nothing. Poirot's expression remained impassive, though his mind noted her admission of the panel's source, a detail Michel had not shared. Fournier continued, her voice growing colder. "I planted clues to confuse. The cigarette stub from Baxter's ashtray, the blue thread from Henshaw's scarf, the flower from my book to mimic sentiment. I knew Grayson's past with Henshaw, his old love, and used it to muddy the waters. The letter I wrote to lure him to trust me, only to betray him. The Vienna ticket was his, a stop he made to meet an informant, but I let it remain, thinking it would point elsewhere." Henshaw gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth, confirming her past with Grayson. Baxter's face darkened, but he held his tongue. Volkov's diamonds caught the light, her expression unreadable, while Sauer and Rossi exchanged wary glances. Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching slightly. "Madame, your plan was clever, but no crime is perfect. The flower, so personal, betrayed you. The notebook, preserved by Michel's fear, sealed your fate. You wove a web, but it entangled you." Fournier's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. "You are right, Monsieur Poirot. I thought myself untouchable, but your little grey cells, they are relentless. I have no regrets, save being caught." Poirot turned to the passengers. "Mesdames et Messieurs, the truth is revealed. Madame Fournier will face justice when we reach the authorities. For now she will be confined to her compartment under guard." As Michel and a porter escorted Fournier away, her steps slow but unbowed, the dining car exhaled. The passengers dispersed, their murmurs a mix of relief and unease. Volkov retreated with her usual hauteur. Baxter lit a cigar with shaking hands. Henshaw clutched her novel, tears in her eyes. Sauer gathered his medical bag, and Rossi slipped away, his charm dimmed. Michel lingered, his face ashen, but Poirot dismissed him with a nod, promising further questions later. Alone, Poirot sat, sipping a fresh tisane, its warmth a contrast to the chill outside. The snow had begun to clear, and distant sounds suggested workers freeing the train from its drift. He opened the notebook, its pages listing names and transactions, a map of the Viper's empire. Grayson's mission had succeeded at the cost of his life, and Poirot's pursuit had honoured it. Yet he felt no triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of order restored. The clues had aligned. The sedative explained Grayson's lack of struggle. The panel solved the locked room mystery. The flower, a personal touch, linked Fournier to the scene. The misdirections, Henshaw's thread, Baxter's stub, Volkov's vial, were clever, but not clever enough. Michel's role, though not criminal, was complicit, his bribe and silence a stain he would carry. As the train's whistle sounded, signalling the track's clearance, Poirot closed his notepad. The midnight express would soon resume its journey to Istanbul, carrying its passengers and their secrets into the dawn. He rose, adjusting his scarf, his mind already turning to the next challenge, for Hercule Poirot knew that human nature, with its passions and betrayals, would always provide puzzles for his little grey cells to solve.